que yo estoy cansado, que el camino es largo. Before we begin to play, I'd like to just set the ground a little bit. When I was in high school, like most kids, I was told over and over and over that we lived in the best country, in the most democratic country in the whole world. And I believed it. I really did, like we all did, right? Maybe we still do. And then I went out in 1965 and became involved with the United Farm Workers. And these were people who were out on strike for better wages. And these were farm workers, people that feed us today. Okay? The people that when you open up vegetables and things, meat or whatever, it comes from the work of farm workers in the fields. And they were treated very badly. They didn't have enough wages, the correct wages, to make a living. And that's why Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, Gilberto Padilla, and many others decided to go on strike. But they weren't the only ones, and they weren't first. The first people to go out on strike was members of AWAC, affiliated with the AFL-CIO, Filipinos. And these were the people that I became involved with. And of course I was green. I was very green when I went out on the first picket line. But I learned right away that that whole concept of being in the most free country in the world and so forth was a myth to me. It became a myth to me because I saw the way that the authorities, the police, the ranchers, the growers, and everybody else treated the strikers and so forth. And there was violence, in the picket lines, and I feared, frankly, I feared for my life. But I was also inspired too, and I was inspired because when we worked in the fields, which we did, my mother and my brothers and sisters, we picked grapes and so forth to raise money, well, for clothes and to eat. And my mother would get up in the morning and she would make breakfast. And early in the morning, como a las 4:30 de la mañana, or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I would get up and then she would cook food for us to eat before we went to go work in the fields. She would also make lunch, okay? And which means that by the time that lunch came around, well, we would eat in the fields. And in the evening, we'd go home. My mother would go again and work and make more food for us. It was continual, the whole process of picking grapes. And this is it's not unusual for farm workers to do that. In fact, it happens all the time. It's happening now. With all of these memories in my mind, I went to be involved in a striking situation which I knew nothing about, But I was very inspired by the Filipino people, the men especially, because by law, they could not bring their wives to this country. How cruel, how utterly cruel that they would not be allowed to bring their wives with them. And so many of them became involved and married Mexican Americans and other folks, other women who were interested. So, but the people that really inflamed my heart, I think I would say, were the workers themselves, the strikers, because they showed me that they were not afraid of anything. And I knew what they were going through, because these were the people that had to get up, just like my mother, to go to make food, to take care of the children. And my mother fought all her life to keep us alive and to give us meaning in this world. One day, after seeing all of these activities, I walked out of the fields and this melody started going on in my head, which the chords I learned from another farm worker who taught them to me. It was a wapango, and it was a 3/4 pattern. And what came out was "To be free as the wind." Was one of the main themes in my mind. Ser como el aire libre, nomás se pasa volando. The wind just blows and goes wherever it wants to go. It's the same as the doves and the birds and so forth. They want to go. And this is what we yearned for, was to have some freedom. And this is what the song means. And when I was a child, my mother told me, "Don't you get mixed up in big problems, okay?" Of course, those are pretty much useless words because life is full of problems. And so, anyway, that's the background to this. Ser como el aire libre, to be free as the wind. Ser como el aire libre nomás se pasa volando. Ser como la paloma también se pasa volando. Cuando yo era chico, mi madrecita decía: cuídate, mi mijito, no te me metas en líos. Ser como el aire libre nomás se pasa volando. Ser como la paloma también se pasa volando. Ser como el aire libre nomás se pasa volando. Ser como la paloma también se pasa volando. Y ahora que ya soy grande, esas palabras me duelen, porque la vida es larga y yo la paso llorando. Ser como el aire libre nomás se pasa volando. Ser como la paloma también se pasa volando. Ser como el aire libre nomás se pasa volando. Ser como la paloma también se pasa volando. Ser como el mar tan lindo también es libre su canto. Many years ago, I was walking the picket line, and there was, Filipinos, Mexicanos, volunteers of different backgrounds that came to support the union in that time. And I got to meet a lot of people. There were musicians everywhere. So I was barely beginning to put chords together on the guitar. I had sung in choir in high school in a quartet, and in the choir also, in the quartet and choir, and performing plays in the dear communities of San Queen Valley. And so I knew a little bit about music, but I didn't know how to put it all together on the guitar by myself. Anyway, it was a wonderful heaven place because musicians came from everywhere and they had all different skills. So I was busy stealing chords and whatever I could. That's what we musicians do, And one day on the picket line, I saw in the back that said, "Don't mourn. Organize." And it blew my mind. So I decided to write a song many years later, but the inspiration came from that place. And it's called "When I Die." And yes, this one is in English. What's that? No. And a point of reference here, it says, and now our boys are on duty all over the globe. By our boys, of course, we're talking about the military. They're all over the world. What is it, 800 and something? About 800 military bases. They're just to protect you there. That's what we're told. That's what the media tells us. They're there for our protection. Not really. You should try it. I'm not telling you what to do, but it'd be a good idea to to use your internet and go in and find some independent authors and writers that would have a completely different opinion, so you can see that that's just not true. And the other part of it is that, another part of the song says, our government is imposing a world so bizarre where right is wrong and wrong is right. I didn't think they'd go so far. Well, we're way beyond 1984. Can someone please show me the door? And 1984 was a book that was written that talked about a totalitarian system of government where everything is controlled. Your thoughts, your movements, society, education, science, where everything is controlled, right? When I saw this as a young man in the film, 1984, and it blew my mind. I said, how can people live like that? When I die, don't you cry. Pick up the banner and fight. Learn how to picket, learn how to strive. Learn how to struggle with all of your might and fight, fight, fight. Don't you believe the baloney that we're number one? There's hunger and fear all over the land, but the rich are having fun. Oh yes, the rich are doing swell. Well, we should send them all to hell. When I die, don't you snore. Rile up the neighbors, stand against war. Stand for the homeless, stand for the poor. Stand with the people who can't take it no more. And fight, fight, fight. And now our boys are on duty all over the globe. They're all fighting wars they'll never win, and at home we're losing hope. Oh yes, we're turning against our friends, the recent immigrants. When I die, don't you weep. Get out your message, take to the streets. Make sure they listen, make sure they sign a basic contract for human rights and fight, fight, fight. Our government is imposing a world so bizarre where right is wrong and wrong is right. I didn't think they'd go so far. We're way beyond 1984. Can someone please show me the door? When I die, don't you sigh. Come join the movement and fly. Stand against hatred, stand against lies. Struggle for freedom all of your life and fight, fight, fight. We have to care for our planet. That is our fate. Learn how to live in peace and harmony. If we do not, it will be too late. And now let's see if we can all be good. Let's go and practice brotherhood. And now let's see if we can all be good. Let's go and practice sisterhood. Thank you. Sisterhood means to treat people humanly and to not murder them just to take their resources away from them because they can't defend themselves, which is what our military is doing all over the world. You don't believe me? Read some articles. Just playing.
And thank you very much to the professor and to everybody involved, Emily, to Crystal Walsh, everyone who was involved in inviting us here. Thank you so much.
The next song is called La Peregrinación. which means the holy journey. And in 1966, we the farm workers, the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, and everybody who was on strike went on a 300-mile march from Delano to Sacramento, which took over a month. And originally, the marchers that made it all the way were about 76 original marchers, strikers from Delano, men and women, and Filipinos. When we arrived at the Capitol, a little over a month later, there were over 10,000 people waiting for us. And I wrote a song, especially at that time, for that march. And every night we met with, in almost every town, from Delano to Sacramento, and had meetings with people. And the Teatro Campesino, the farmworkers theater, performed each night. And I sang this following song, which says, am I supposed to say that I'm tired, that the road is long and the end is not near? I don't come to sing because I have a great voice, and I'm also not here to cry about what I'm living through. I go from Delano to Sacramento to fight for my rights. My Virgencita Guadalupana, listen to these steps, because one day the whole world will know about it. And como quisiera, how I would love to rest, but something inside my soul says that you cannot rest. From Delano, I go to Sacramento to fight for my rights.
And I think there's something worth mentioning about that, because I know that he spoke a lot to me about when he was doing the song. He wasn't a particularly religious person. His mother had just passed away, and so he really struggled. You remember you said you struggled with that Guadalupana, but he decided that the song was for the people and not for himself. Because when people sing something religious, you think, oh, they believe that, but sometimes people do things for a purpose. So.
Yeah, I was not very religious, especially because I had asked God to spare my mother, and he ignored me. So I decided to ignore him. Can you picture farm workers walking walking from Delano to Sacramento? I can barely believe it today. Y que yo he de decir que yo estoy cansado, que el camino es largo y no se ve el fin. Yo no vengo a cantar porque mi voz sea buena, ni tampoco a llorar mi malestar. Hasta Sacramento, mis derechos a pelear, mi virgencita Guadalupana, oye estos pasos que todo el mundo lo sabrá. descansar. Pero mi alma grita, tú no puedes descansar. Desde Delano voy hasta Sacramento, hasta Sacramento. Mis derechos a pelear. Thank you very much. Applause is like wine and good marijuana to performers. Bill Freitas was a hell of an organizer. For many years, he worked with many different organizations, and he fought like crazy for the workers, for the common workers in different unions. And so he headed a lot of strikes and was very successful for his tactics. And he just happened to be married to my sister, Esperanza Freitas. And so we had a lot of contact. And at that time I was teaching theater in a little town called Del Rey, and I didn't have a ride. So he was working in the area too, and he gave me a ride. So we had a lot of conversations, and he always backed me up. And he would tell me, give him hell, give him hell. I didn't really know who he was at the time, or what he was involved with, but I came to an understanding the other day when we were invited to go to his memorial, where the people that worked with him the closest started filling in the gaps, and I said, just blew my mind how great of a tactician he was and what a wonderful organizer he was. But way back many years ago, back then when he was working with some strikers from Coors, that's right, Coors, he said, I want you to please come up with a song for the workers so that they can be more united and fight harder, you know? And I said, okay. So out of the kindness of his heart, he sent me almost 2 inches full of material through the mail at that time. And he said, you think you can make a song out of that? I said, my goodness, I said, I can make a long playing record from that. So I looked through, I didn't want to create a melody because that's not the idea. When you want people to sing a song, it's something that they should more or less have an understanding about, or that they understand, you know, that they can sing. It's pretty basic and simple. So I came across When Johnny Comes Marching Home, and I said, oh, that sounds like a good little tune, you know. And When Johnny Comes Marching Home was a song that was written during the Civil War of this country, you know, and both sides sang it. And originally, it was by, I mean, what a coincidence, it was a drinking song, when Johnny fills the cup or something like that. And so anyway, I sat down and I worked it out.
And everything in here is what Coors was doing, is probably still doing, because they always hush it up afterwards. But everything that's in there, I was like surprised, but I kept seeing in the print everything that he put in the song.
Whenever you walk into a liquor store again, and you reach out to grab a Coors again, my friend, there are reasons why you shouldn't buy this brand of beer, and I'll tell you why. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of yours. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of mine. If you went out to get a job today at Coors, you'd have to take a lie detector test at Coors, and every question is personal. Private matters no one should know. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of yours. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of mine. I want you to know that Joseph Coors has police, a private force he's got around to keep his peace, and day or night they search and seize any worker's personal things. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of yours. Joseph Coors ain't no friend racist politicians who are in cahoots, and together they fight the union man, the black, the brown, the woman, the gay. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of yours. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of mine. So now you know that Joseph Coors has no respect. The human rights of other people he neglects. Do not buy Coors or Coors Light, Herman Joseph's or Killian's Red. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of yours. Joseph Coors ain't no friend of mine.
I'm kidding, I don't know it.
He probably still should be struck really hard, I don't know.
I remember when I was, I'm a generation after him, but I was involved in the secondary boycott of yellow wines in San Fernando Valley at CSU in Northridge. So every week they would give us or every other day, they would give us a list of the wines, of the winemakers that had gone to the table with the farm workers. So those were the wines that we could drink. Mm-hmm. And you know, how proud we are. I mean, a proud moment of mine that I could brag that I had drunk 9 beers and could still walk. But that's college. But I hope you guys, nothing like that. I know you guys.
Whatever you do, don't smoke that evil weed.
Oh, man. Bad.
I mean, don't smoke and get caught. Patricia and I, when we were younger, we used to go for a walk in our community about 3 miles or whatever. She was younger, so she could walk further. I'd limp back quietly, you know, and we kept noticing that the homeless people were just in numbers out there, even back many years ago. And our city wouldn't do anything about it, you know. And today, just a couple of days ago, we took another walk, and they're all over the street in my community, everywhere. And then I wanted to get away from that, you know, just to clear my mind a little bit. I went upstairs, and Patricia was watching the TV, said, "What is she watching?" A documentary on homeless people. I'm going, ay, Jesus. So that drove me to write a song. And it's called, and I did this on purpose, okay? Do not come to Fresno if you're homeless.
And I wanted to point out a few people here that were involved in the movimiento. There's my friend over here, Guadalupe Holguín. She's sitting right here. She was involved with El Campesino and many different projects.
Robberies, shootouts in LA with the sheriff's department.
Oh, you're Richard. Oh, Richard
Yes,
Soto.
you mean.
Yeah, we love the same person. We did a play in 2010. I went back to school and I decided, I was so turned on about Ricardo Flores Magón.
Yes.
And then I saw him in the Facebook.
I got the book.
Yeah, well, several books, but anyhow, it's about Ricardo. Nice to see you, Richard. Thank you for coming. And then another person that's here from this, Agustin's brother, Ruben. He was also, he did the Drunken Head of Pasadena.
He was also involved in a tour that took place in Nancy, France, called the Theater of the World, where theatrical groups came from around the world to perform their best, and he was there. I didn't go that time because I was so tuckered out, just tired. But I missed a great opportunity, but my brother didn't, and he was there.
And there's another person here who, Felix Alvarez. Felix, por favor, you know, please give a hand.
I'm from Livingston.
He was in Teatro Campesino, and then he had Teatro de los Pobres in San Jose for many, many years.
And it's good to see that we're surrounded by so many troublemakers. I'm feeling much at home. Don't come to Fresno if you're homeless. And don't go telling all your friends. Don't you go begging or sleeping in the streets. We don't want that here. We look down on anyone who makes our town look bad. Don't come to Fresno if you're homeless. And don't you dare bring all your pets. Don't bring your personal belongings if you come. You won't be here long. And don't go pushing shopping carts down on Woodward Park. How much can we take? Seeing the world so full of hate, so much suffering and no reason why. I think it's time to occupy. Don't come to Fresno if you're homeless. And we don't care if you're a vet or that you lost your buddies in Iraq and Afghanistan. Quit your whimpering, get a job. To us you're just a bum. Please come to Fresno if you're wealthy. If you like taking people's homes. If you love war and stealing from the poor, then welcome home, my friend. You all come over and help us kick the homeless while they're down. We all know our city is cruel, that our leaders should be overruled. Disrespectful is all they can be, but what people need is dignity. What people need is dignity. This is the last song. It's called Quihubo, Raza. Hello, race. I can just find it here somewhere. This is about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which I'm sure that many of you have not heard about, so let me tell you a little bit about it. In 1848, Mexico fought a war with the United States, which the United States had provoked because they wanted all that land, you know. And there were just a bunch of pesky Indians on it and Mexicans, and you know, we don't need them either. Right?
But the United States waited until Mexico was in a lot of danger. They had there were all these countries, these foreign countries trying to take over Mexico. So what does the U.S. do? That's when they stole half of Mexico. They went in and did the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo.
And in this treaty, it says some really beautiful things, if you believe it. It says that people could practice their culture, their traditions. In other words, the people that were left in the Southwest, half of Mexico, they could study, work their culture. They anybody who owned land could keep it, and they would be respected, and they would be that the law would be applied, you know, evenly and fairly. Now, doesn't that sound like an outright Indian treaty? You know, because that's what happened. When I went to school, the teachers used to wash my mouth with water and soap, and they would throw me into the closet and make an example to the rest of the kids in the class. Half of them were in the same boat that I was. They couldn't speak English anyway, you know. But it was not allowed in school, and so. But I got even in a kind of a way. One day I walked into school and I saw this red flash come through the air, and automatically my hands shot to the back. You know, I don't know why, but it saved my life. And something hit my face and just knocked me backwards. And if I hadn't thrown my hands out, I would have smashed the back of my head on the cement, and it would probably really injure me really badly, or it would have killed me. And I was so mad that all I saw was red. And there was this bully, this guy that was about 1.5 feet bigger than me, big guy, in the first grade, and I was just a little shrimp, anyway. And all I saw was that I wasn't going to take it anymore, because he had been harassing the rest of the kids, especially the little girls, knocking them down, and then laughing at them, you know, and I put up with that. And then this day I said, no, cabrón, esta vez no, not today, dude, you know. And I rushed him, and somehow, with the anger that I had or whatever, I picked him up and spun him around, and with his head to the bottom, and I smashed his head on the cement too. And I threw him on the floor while he was bleeding, and I stepped back and I said, oh my God, I think I just made a terrible mistake. And the teacher came through, and with the principals following closely behind, and of course they all handed me to each other and whipped my butt, you know, badly. When I got home, I showed my mother the damage, and she said, we're going to move, you're not going to go to school here anymore. So this is called Quihubo, Raza, and it was written during the Chicano movement, where people... Thank you, Patricia. Where people were fighting for their rights to speak Spanish, to study their history, you know, and so forth. But did the FBI pay attention to that? No. They went up to the Brown Berets, they killed the Black Panthers, and they decimated and destroyed many other organizations, especially women's organizations across the country. And this was done real quietly, you know, but it was done. And it's still being done. So anyway, this is Quihubo, Raza, this is Spanish, but it basically talks about that. It goes, the Mexicano doesn't want to become a gringo. Don't let that word insult you. Okay, it just means white. And this is a... Mexicano doesn't want to become a gringo, and he can't, and he will not be, because in his veins he has the blood of the Chichimecas tribe, Zapoteca tribe, the Los Yaquis, Xochimilcas, and the Mayas, the people that were in Mexico and in this country also. And then the blood of Morelos, the president, Zapata, the revolutionary fighter, and the famous Francisco Villa that the U.S. went after, just went after them. Anyway, here it goes. This is a nice little tempo and upbeat. Bueno, pues Quihubo, ¿cómo les va? Qué lindo día para cantar noticias que han llegado de Nuevo México, 1848. Pues fue firmado el gran tratado de Guadalupe Hidalgo, prometiendo justicia y libertad a tierras y terrenos de gente indígena. No, hombre, qué mentirosos cuando firmaron el tratado los americanos. El mexicano ser gringo no puede ni quiere. El mexicano ser gringo no puede ni será. Porque en sus venas trae la sangre chichimeca, zapoteca y de los yaquis, xochimilca y de los mayas. Y en su cuerpo trae la sangre de Cuauhtémoc, de Morelos y Zapata y el famoso Pancho Villa. Texas y Utah y California, Wyoming y Colorado, Nevada, Nuevo México, todas estas tierras fueron robadas. Y al presente nos encontramos rogándole al gobierno. Reyes, López, Tijerina, en Nuevo México ha levantado armas, sus tierras reclamó. Ahí está, y aquí nos tienen, nuestra cultura aplastada y hablando English. Chichimeca, Zapoteca y de los yaquis, Xochimilca y de los mayas. Y en su cuerpo traga sangre de Cuauhtémoc, de Morelos y Zapata, y el famoso Pancho Villa. Thank you very much. But before we go to the next section of the program, I want to show you something that we taught the National Farm Workers. And at that time I learned that this way of applauding came from this horrible red this island that everybody hated in this country, which is called Cuba today. And if you went to some kind of an event, you would hear this applause taking place. And it goes like this. You can join us. Watch. It goes like this. Patricia Wells!
¡Que viva Gilberto Padilla!
¡Que viva Gilberto! Thank you very much.
¿Cuántos más?
This is the end of our musical program. Thank you very much for staying here and listening to some history. Did I get you all riled up?
Buenas tardes.
Buenas.
Hello, everybody. And I'll be rather brief because I think it's more important that we have a conversation, that you have an opportunity to talk to them. But I wanted to say two things. One is that I think it's very fitting that we're hosting this performance and visit by Agustín Lira and Patricia Wells. We have our new motto that is building the future, because I think it's important to recognize people like them who have devoted their lives to building the future we are now living as the present. I mean, we're talking about decades of struggle, decades of fight, and when we study this academically in my classes, in other classes, sometimes the human dimension is lost, the sacrifice, the personal touch that goes into the struggle. So I think it's really important to recognize that and to be able to do so in this context. And I was mentioning about the pilgrimage to Sacramento and how those steps, and you were hoping that the steps would be heard. And I would like to share a rather brief anecdote or its personal story. And they were indeed heard. When I was a high school student back in Spain, we did hear about that. We heard about the struggle and the strike in Delano and Cesar Chavez, and we could only do so through the underground newspapers, through the underground or barely legal magazines that we were able to read at the time. In fact, the tour that Teatro Campesino did in Europe had to skip Spain because they were not allowed to perform in the country, which was still under a fascist dictatorship. And so we were hearing you, and I'm so glad that now I'm hearing you in person and not through those echoes, and I'm able to teach what you have accomplished, not only through the initial participation in Teatro Campesino, but then Teatro de La Tierra, and as I said, an entire life devoted to building the future, and you continue to do so. So I want to thank you both for being here, for sharing your experience, your talent, your commitment, your militancy with us, and I would like to open the floor to the audience. I'm extremely pleased to see an audience where we have people from the university and people from the community. This is one of the things that I think is most significant when we achieve these kinds of inclusive dialogue that is not always the case. And so welcome everybody. Please do feel welcome here and ask your questions or share your comments. Y no sean tímidos.
Please, not all at once.
If not, I'll be talking.
Do you see the kinds of things that you started a long time ago continuing?
Yes, I do. But now today I see it across the country. I see people marching, for example, for Floyd, and all over the world for the different political situations that have taken place. And in our communities, it's sometimes lacking, but it's still there. But for example, Patricia and I have been there for over 40 years, teaching music and theater, and taking live performances to different universities and colleges around the country, and performing. For over 20 years, the musical group Alma that Patricia and I formed together, we performed everywhere, including Mexico, with one trip to Cuba. And so we took these same messages out there too. And the whole idea is to let people understand, like what the professor was saying here, is that to let people know what went behind those actual situations and marches that took place. What was behind it? What was behind it was the necessity to live in peace, to have harmony, to treat each other like human beings, and to be treated that way. That's important. And this is what workers today need, union members and so forth. We need that harmony, we need that peace, and we also need to be able to have the correct wages to be able to live. So I'm very proud to see that there are strikes across the country right now. People are striking even, what was it, name a food place?
Starbucks or
Starbucks,
Amazon.
Amazon, all these other places. And let me tell you, they deserve it. Because we have a tremendous weapon and tool at our disposal, which I learned. I saw in Delano, I saw the power of it. In 1970, over 43 growers showed up in Delano, California to sign contracts with the United Farmworkers. I was singing all the way there and just kicking my heels up and saying, "Finally, you dirty son of a..." I can't curse here, do I? But I think you get the idea, because they were really cruel. They were really cruel to the workers, and they needed to treat people better. I went into the fields at that time, by the way, just to test those contracts. And I was working away, cutting grapes and so, because I know how to do that, and packing the stuff. And this guy walked up behind me and he goes, "He knew my name." He says, "Agustín." And I said, "Yes." He says, "You're working too hard. You're working too hard, carnal." Who in the hell ever, what boss has ever said that to his workers, "You're working too hard"? It's to the contrary. And I told him, "I'm working as slow as I can." He goes, "Well, you can go a little bit slower, because you're getting paid good money to do that, and it's all quality work." And I went, the contracts that we did were good stuff, very good stuff. 43 growers, I think it was, that showed up, and they were all just pissed off. They were angry as hell, because this little, I'm going to say it, chicken shit little union knocked them to the ground and made them pay and made them treat other people like human beings. And that's what we need to do. Striking, boycotting, marches, all of these things are the most powerful tools that we have. And if I tell you anything else, it would be a lie. If people mistreat you or whatever, for whatever reason or purpose, take them apart. Get your group together, picket, march. Go after them.
Write songs. Write songs, because...
Get thrown in jail for writing songs like this.
No,
I have something to say.
adelante.
I was a student in Mexico City at UNAM. I got in there, I don't know how, well, I do know how, but I got into the school, and I really wanted to hear their viewpoint about Mexico and U.S. history. And of course, it was shocking to me, right? But one of the things that I did was I would go to the cafes, and I would see musicians that were in exile, that had to leave their countries because of the music that they were writing. And when they found out, at first I used to say, "Oh, I'm from the U.S., I'm a Chicana." And they would, boy, man, after that I never admitted I was from the U.S. because they just, they would start lecturing me and telling me, what you represent to us. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, I'm barely learning anything about history, I'm just learning. And they all expressed to me how important it is for us to have the intelligentsia, or also not only intelligentsia, but the music and the culture of fight back. When you think about, there's another song called El Pueblo Unido Jamás Será Vencido. That was written by Quilapayún, I think Sergio Ortega and Quilapayún, and they used it in the marches, just like this song about Coors, when they were striking with Coors. So really, if you can think, right now I heard a young lady, HER, I don't know any of the new groups, but now I hear some of the words, and I'm just like, oh, it just warms my heart, but we should all have it. In all of our cultures, there should be canto de rebeldía, a rebellious message, because look at where we are right now, Disney's gonna eat us up. I keep saying that, but they're gonna eat us up, man, unless we fight back. That's all I wanted to say, is that it's just extremely important to have, and to say, and to speak when there is an opportunity, because that's what changes things, not when you don't take care of it.
And certainly to sing, because you made the point, it's one of the most international, the one media that travels so fast to other countries and all that. And Nuevo Canto traveled throughout Latin America, to the US, to Europe, etc. And it's very easy to embrace those messages when they're put into music, into song. And so it's played a significant part, and this is where you and Chunky and all the musicians in the Chicano movement played such an important role. More from the audience, yes?
Muchísimas gracias, gracias de corazón. I'm a gringa from California, but I'm a Spanish teacher here. I'm very lucky to teach our Central Valley students. And a question I have, especially when I'm dealing with our student population, I feel that sometimes young people can be divided in two groups, either very apathetic, and I'm thinking of that brainwashed. When I think of 1984, I think of all the students and ourselves as well on our phones getting brainwashed by so many things. And then I think of our other students. We have wonderful students here, but sometimes I see young people who they think that they are at the forefront of making change, that no one has made change, social change, like they have before. And I think it's so beautiful to hear the histories and the stories of other generations. And I feel that we're sometimes going backwards in how rebellious we are. And I wonder if you have any words of inspiration, either for us teachers or for students who are in the room, to get young people. Maybe I'm nostalgic for a time before my time, but I was almost crying when I heard your songs. They're so powerful.
One of the things that I would say would be turn the TV off, especially to the so-called news, because the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are different only in words. Their actions, look what Biden just did to the railroad striker, the workers, the railroad workers. No pension, well, a small pension, but they can't rest, and just all kinds of stuff that he did. So he proves that he's not any kind of a person to treat people like that. And these people, they need time out, and they need sick leave. They're human beings too, and they're being worked to death. Why? Because there are very few engineers that are left too. And so what they're doing is they're squeezing the rest of them all to death. And the whole idea is to hold people down, okay? That's the whole idea, is to keep people down, especially poor people, so you can stomp on them, like our military does around the world. Every day they're there, under the guise of protecting us. Who the hell are they protecting us from? We need protection from them. We really do. And it's horrible, but it's true, it's happening. And like the Democrats behave like they're our buddies and our friends, but they're not. It's a sucker's come on, The Republican Party tells you what? It tells you outright what it says. I hate you. I'm going to take you down. The Democratic Party says, oh, we're all Christian. We're all, good folks, and we're friendly, and we like you. We really like you out there, right? No. What did Joy Reid say the other day?
Oh, she said, and I stopped watching because it made me mad. She said, oh, and you all know that we have at least over 800 bases all over the world that are protecting our security. And I'm going, well, 8,000 miles away, what are they protecting? I'm here in California. I mean, just I remember the nuns when I was a kid, you know, and this whole thing about Cuba. The nuns at the Catholic, this New Mexican nun started telling us kids when we were in catechism that this evil man was going to come and take our homes and our food and everything. And he used to be an altar boy, but he went with the devil. And he said, what's his name? Fidel Castro. And I said, oh, sister. I said, and she goes, yes. And I said, is he coming here? And then she goes, he might come here, you know? Can you imagine what that does to a little kid, you know? I was terrified. I ran home and I told Mom, Fidel Castro's gonna come and take our house, you know? That's, you know, these are people that are putting ideas into, you know, children's minds.
And supposedly they do it in the schools too, you know? They allow the military to come, you know, and talk to the student body, but they won't let anybody else with a different viewpoint on the campuses. What does that tell you about this country? It's just a small little, you know, boy.
No,
Well, one more thing is that you were saying something about, I think that there are people from all different backgrounds. When I was in college, there were people I thought that the UFW was gonna be full of Chicanos, you know, and I was eager and I wanted to be around my own, you know what I mean? I wanna believe in my Raza. And I get over there and there's people from all different backgrounds. And believe it or not, being a college student and, you know, sometimes I was wishy-washy. And I had this friend, Dory Raskin, she was Jewish, and she had a big conscience, enough for all of us, but she would always find me. And she goes, aren't you gonna come to the boycott this time? So I have to admit, I had a little pushing, a little nudging. And one day, she took out this song, and she was trying to sing it. It was this one, Quihubo Raza. And she had the paper, and then I said, oh, Lord, Dory, that sounds kind of bad. And then she goes, well, I'm trying really hard. And I said, let me see the words. And I saw the words and I went, oh, wow, man, these words are beautiful. And I go, try it again. You know, and so when I first, I mean, she tried, you know, but she was going all over the place. And when I finally heard how the song went, I heard him. Oh, you can imagine. I said, I want to get some classes.
And she did. She left college and joined me.
Well, it's a long story. Long story.
But it's important, I mean, that the context is also being considered. You know, in many states, there are certain theories that cannot be taught in schools, certain words that cannot be used. Probably it's coming to us someday, and unless we do something to fight that push. So in that context, it remains even more important that we hear these voices, that we remember that these voices have been here for a long time, and is not an accident, is not a fad of any kind. It is part of a continuous presence and a continuous endurance. And because you brought us all the way back to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, it has a long history of both oppression and resistance.
Chris Hedges, remember that name? He's a writer, he's an author. Read his articles. Read his articles. Get a chance to go into the computer. And he has all kinds of different articles about why this country is doing what it's doing. Okay? It's very important. If you really want an education, read Chris Hedges.
More from the audience.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a kind of a two-part question, if you don't mind. The first one was, I wanted to get your perspective on the history of the valley. Have you seen it change, if it's positive or negative, with your song about the housing market being the way it is? If that's something that you see a good thing, or if that's a bad thing. If it is a bad thing, do you ever see it going back to a good way? And then my second part was, given the kind of demographic of the valley, do you ever see, in the United States as well, do you ever see people being able to get along outside of the barriers that hold them through race and everything? Is that something that you're hopeful for, or is that something that, given your past involved with it, that you don't
I think I can answer the second part of the question, is that the system, the way that it is very careful to keep people separate from each other. They do the most that they can to keep us apart. Because once you get together and you share the same dreams and aspirations and so forth, you become an enemy. You become an enemy to the system because you're fighting and you're together and you're united. And it's difficult to tear people apart. when they're working on such things as that, you know, freedom of speech, really. And you are right. I didn't hear your first part of the question. Did you?
The housing,
Here.
you were speaking about what you thought, what he thought about the housing
And the
situation.
direction of the Central Valley, exploding in the housing market and people migrating here. And I wanted to get your guys' perspective on what you thought about that, if that's going to continue, or if you feel like that's.
That all hinges on water, you know, even though we have a lot of water right now, it's the pesticides, it's the contaminated water. It's a lot of, I think, what do you call it, environmental issues that are coming about, destruction of habitat. You know, it's
And poverty. Poverty is not only tearing up, you know, these poor communities, it's across the country. People are being thrown out of their homes because they can't pay the rent. You know, the families are living from paycheck to paycheck. There's violence in the street, there's murder, the teenagers are being killed, you know, and it's everywhere. A really scary statistic I saw the other day was that 1 in 3 females has thought about committing suicide. What kind of country do we live in? You think about that, you know, and people buying, the R-15s, you know, that you can blow people away for good. You know, and they still don't want, you know, to stop that from happening. And everybody can do it. Biden could do it just signing a piece of paper, but he won't do it because they want to continue that terror. They want to make us feel like we have no place to run, and we do. We can run to each other. We can organize and we can fight back. That's what we can do. Stop watching the TV.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's something that you had said when you said that the system is built to keep us apart, and it really plays on our differences. And in your time and your experiences, what are some of the messages and some of the themes that you saw bring people the closest together? What are some of the things that was best used to rally the people around? And then my second question is kind of, what's more important? Is it the message or the way that the message is delivered to the people?
Everybody has to live. So one of the things that brings everybody together is better wages. You can see that across the country. All these different folks that work for all these different lousy corporations, they're striking back and they're getting pretty good wages, you know, which didn't happen before. And there's all kinds of different organizations, you know, like the Floyd protests took part all over the world.
Yeah.
That was unheard of. It's unheard of, and that's a sense of the promise. Chris Hedges, by the way, says that the hope is in the streets. Get your message out there, fight. I don't know about the rest of it, but I do know about that unity is really important, and it has to be across all the different cultures and the different races and everybody else. Otherwise, it doesn't work because you become divided again. Okay. That's what I do know, that it does work as a fact. When I went to Delano, I saw people from Anglos, Filipinos, Puerto Ricanos, Cubanos, Mexicanos, Jewish folks, and so forth. I mean, there, and they all fought with their hearts and soul for the movement. That's why the United Farm Workers were able to bring all these chicken shit growers together, you know, and to sign contract for the first time in their lives. You know, that's important. That unity, we can all build it together. We have more in common than we do otherwise. We have more in common.
And I wanted to know about whether the message or the delivery of the message, the means of delivering the message, is more important. Was that your second question?
Which message are you talking about?
And that's kind of what I would assume, but you know, just kind of getting around to the point of, like for instance, the way you delivered your message was through your music, and that really resonated with people. So that, I guess, kind of that way is kind of what is the best way to deliver the message?
There are a lot of different ways to do it. You can do it through music, through theater, through poetry, through whatever. Getting together with each other, sharing your thoughts, thinking about how to change things, you know. Begin on that principle. What needs to be done? Can you do it? Will you do it? Will you put yourself to fight? When I went to Delano, I was 20 years old. I was 20, and I had been homeless for 2 years. out in the streets. When I went to Delano, they promised me food, a place to stay, with the opportunity to climb in the organization. I had no idea that we were going to begin a theatrical group that would take the message across the country and all the different parts of the world, or that our music would be heard in all those different places either. But it does feel good. It feels wonderful to be able to say that I was there. And I got my inspiration from the people themselves, from the workers themselves who were suffering. You know, I was suffering too. And I came to life slowly. My eyes opened up. My question was, do we live in the most free country in the world? And little by little I said, no, I saw it. And I saw the treatment that we received because we wanted better wages. And I said, esto no está bien. This is not right. And that's what propelled me to be involved.
Yes.
More of a statement. Everybody here is, active in something social where you're being observed by kids. You're inspiring little kids. Little kids are looking up to you. You're their heroes. When I was a little kid, I had my heroes. Muero, Steve, my brother Sil, Joey. They were active, and I looked up to them, and everybody here has kids around them that look up to you. So, anyway.
Thank you for the statement.
Another statement also. Here we are. We've done it. You're here. At one time, we had to speak up to get into the colleges. First of all, unions. Yeah, they gave us all the work in the fields, in the factories, in the service jobs. We had to push. Not we. When I say we, I'm talking about different races. I grew up in the Bay Area in the 60s. And there, well, they call them the flower children with cane. But then the blacks were riding the Fillmore. The Indians were taking over their land in Alcatraz. The grape strikes came to the city, and that's when we got involved. And that's how things happen. You have to speak up as a group, and divide and conquer is their method. But no, there's more people than there is them. Them, I'm talking about the little amount of people, that are in control of our lives. You don't think somebody's manipulating the economy right now to raise the prices for political reasons. And the needs of the people are not being met. That's why you have to speak up. And as young people, you have to, well, it'll inspire you for what we've seen, but the future is in your hands.
You are part of that hope, all of you. And don't think that you're not, because you are. You're a part of that hope. You're a part of that struggle. Even if you don't fight, you're still part of that struggle. Because if you don't move, you will be moved on. Thank you.
Ballis is here. I don't know if you have seen her or heard her speak, but Maya, can you just get up a little bit? She worked with George Ballis, and she's George Ballis's wife.
And I don't know if you had a chance to see George Ballis's photographs, because he was there cataloging, photographing many of the movements, because he went way back into the black struggle also. But his photographs are beautiful because they capture that moment that speaks for all of us. Because he becomes part of the photograph himself. He puts himself into it, and he had that kind of heart. Many photographers came to Delano, California, and I was a student to some of them, like John Lewis, for example. And I think George Ballis also loaned me a camera one time, and I didn't follow through with him. But all these other photographers, they all gave something of themselves, and they donated their skills, and they cataloged all of these different movements. But outstanding photographs, the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life are George Ballis's photographs. And it just captures you, and you can feel what the people are going through in those photographs. It's very important. And a unique photographer. We miss him a lot.
And I just wanted to mention, Richard Soto, you have a center in Stockton,
I
right?
do.
And it's about Chicano history.
It's a 3-story building, it's a Chicano Research Center. In the basement, we have an archival center, where we're trying, because if we're not documented, and I don't mean with papeles, if we don't have our history now, we weren't there and we don't exist. So I'm having people bring in anything that documents our existence, and we're saving it. And then, on the main floor, we have like 20,000 puro raza, Chicano, Mexicano libros, revistas, journals, LPs, one of yours, couple of yours. And then on the top floor, we're making a museum.
Wow.
You know, and it all comes out of my wallet.
Wow.
So I dress casual.
Start a GoFundMe.
You know, I wanted to mention something because he's asking about whether it's the message or the way you send it. And I think that Americo Paredes was great. And I think that the corrido de Tish Hinojosa wrote about him when he died, con su pluma en su mano. That is so awesome. When I was teaching Chicano history, my students had to get corridos. They had to find them, bring them to class, and share them, which meant they had to translate them a lot of times.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I wanted to say something in response to you as a professor here. What I tell my students in my Chicano studies classes, sometimes students, as we all did when we were students, tend to perceive the subject as that, a subject, but it's more than that. It's something that you take with you, it's something that you take back to other people who are not taking the class or who will not take the class. And that's where you are the person in charge of the message. And so it's not simply that you're receiving the message, you're transmitting, you are creating your own message.